What's up, YouTube? You know who it is, Winter, aka Emma Jane. So today's topic is how to set boundaries. This comes from one of my amazing listeners, and I am grateful that they sent this question in. And I think because we are in the month of February right now, this is the month of love. And in order to get love, you must love yourself, right? And the first thing when it comes to loving ourselves is to set boundaries for ourselves. Because if we don't do that, we'll let all kind of critters inside of our world that will tear the house down. And we don't want to do that. So we want to have boundaries, beautiful boundaries that surround our body, our mind, our soul, our heart. And that is how we show ourselves self-love. And I want to go ahead and say like and subscribe, or I'm going to cut it off. Boop, just playing. But, I would like to say that there's something sexy about setting a boundary, right? And the reason why is, have you ever walked up to somebody or knew someone who was a boss and they had boundaries like, you can only talk to me from this time to this time? And so that actually puts out a perceived level of value that they value their time. And if you are going to step to them, you must value their time. So they just put boundaries on their time. Now, have you ever met a person who's like, it's whatever, just like, let me know what you want to do? It doesn't mean that you don't really respect them. It just means that you kind of feel like their time is not as valuable as the person who put boundaries on it. And I hope that example kind of like leads us into the conversation of why it's important to set boundaries, especially if you want to be perceived as a higher value individual. Okay. And so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about it and teach you about it and why it's so important. So a little backstory. I love to come with the backstory. When I was in grad school, I would have to say there is one thing that I walked out in 12 years of my schooling was how to set a boundary. Okay. I am like the boundary queen. So whoever sent me this, I want to tell you thank you, because you came to the right place. The reason why becoming a therapist, you had to have boundaries, was because you were dealing with people who had mental illness, okay? And I am going to touch on who tests boundaries the most, who does it unconsciously, and who does it in a manipulative way, all right? So we're going to talk about that. But when you are a therapist, you deal with people who have mental illness and personality disorders. And many times they will push the boundaries. They have been pushing boundaries their whole life, either being a victim, either trying to get their way by deceitful ways, finessing you. The word finesse is softening you up, buttering you, massaging you to do what they want you to do in a way that they have like kind of convinced you to do it, even though you did not want to do it. And so as a therapist, right, we are always put in these positions where someone will try to push our boundaries. They will try to get more time with you. They will try to get free sessions with you. They will try to butter you up, bring you gifts, do all kinds of stuff, because in the conversation, they're becoming transparent with you. And when you become transparent with someone, you feel this sense of closeness that you don't get with many people on the outside world. And so what you do is you're like, oh my God, how do I bring that person closer to me? Because in therapy, it's such a therapeutic experience, because you are unleashing your soul, your desires that you have not been able to do out into the real world. And so when you are close to somebody like that, you have to check yourself that you don't try to run over the therapist's boundaries. So we have to be very strict with people. And I am going to teach you how to have boundaries that are tight like a therapist, okay? So let's first talk about how there's different ways to do this though, okay? So you're gonna have to understand that you may have to set boundaries over the phone and not in person. And then there's times where you're gonna have to boss up and set those boundaries in person and really feel the energy of the disappointment right in your face. And how do you deal with that, okay? So I really want to go into all of the things that you are going to feel once you set that boundary. And this is what I think a lot of people who talk about these things, they do not tell you. So when you are a natural people pleaser or you like approval, those are the personalities that have the hardest time setting boundaries. Because with that type of personality, no one wants to feel like they let the other person down. And when you have boundaries, you really don't realize you're saying no to them and yes to you. So you have to learn how to reframe that and be like, you know what? I am saying yes, just not to you. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go ahead and say no to you, that I don't have it this time. I don't want to go here. I want to eat this. I believe this. And that is, yes, it's saying no to you, but it's saying yes to me. And it's saying yes to the people that are aligned with me. Okay, so many times we don't want to divide. If we're people pleasing out there in the world, what we're trying to do is, connect with others. And so the way that we do that is being too agreeable, right? It's saying, sure, we can do this. And then deep inside, we have this thing where we're like, I really don't want to do this. And we can get addicted to over promising and under delivering when we don't have boundaries. Pay attention to that. If you say yes to a lot of people and a lot of things and you're not setting the boundaries in that space, you may realize that you're overspending yourself. And then you actually look whack at the end of the day because you have overpromised to everybody. You have no energy at the end of the day. And now people just think you're a liar, a flaky person. And so you really don't realize that not having boundaries and saying yes and no to things that really, really matter will burn you out on the back end. Okay. It will cause people to want to use you up. It will cause codependency, meaning that they just can't seem to thrive without you. And they will run over you because you're saying, I am here to be ran over. And that is not the look we're looking for. So we're trying to stand firm on business, okay? Stand on business, stand on boundaries, all right? So that's what we're going to do now. All right, so let's talk about how to set boundaries in person and what are we going to deal with after we set the boundary and how do we deal with that? So the first thing you want to know is body language is important. When you are in front of somebody, it is important that you are standing up straight, your head up, heads up, shoulders back. And when someone confronts you with something that you don't want to do, you have to practice saying no and start practicing saying no to little things first. So let's say someone invites you to a place you don't want to go. No, that's not going to work for me today. Perhaps let's try another week. Or what about this suggestion? If that doesn't work, guess what? You're not aligned in that situation and they will either go with what you want or they will go with you another time. All right. Another thing is eye contact. Okay. You want to make sure that you are giving eye contact to the person you're setting the boundary with. That is how you assert yourself in a way that says, I'm standing on my boundary. I said no, I'm not wavering, I'm not looking down, I'm not looking around. I'm looking you dead in your eye and I'm saying, no, that doesn't work for me. It shows confidence. It shows that you believe in what you're saying no to or what you're saying yes to, which is yourself. And it also lets the other person know that I think she's serious or I think he's serious. He just looked at me dead in my eye and said, no, that's not going to work. However, if you are one of those people who really love this person and want to actually meet them somewhere, offer an alternative. Start to be quick with your thinking and say, you know what? I may not be able to do it now, but what we can do later is we'll talk about it and we can figure out how we can, come to some agreement later. But when it comes to this particular situation, no, this is not going to work for me. Let's try to figure something else out. There's a way you can soften it up and not come across as a B or a mean person, and it's okay. It's saying, I hear you, but this doesn't work for me, but we can find something that does work. All right. The next thing is going to be tone inflection, your voice inflection. If you say no like this, no. Okay, no, that means you can be broke. That means that boundary is not real. That means that person, depending on how strong they are in their mind, can break your boundary. Understand that people who want you to break their boundaries are typically in their head more powerful than you or others around them, and more influential than you and others around them. There are professional boundary pushers that know how to finesse the crowd. You know who's great at boundary pushing? Marketers. They will make you switch Tide to Ajax or whatever, or Arm& Hammer, because they just pushed your boundary. You were like sold on Tide, but they came over there and said, you know what? I know you love Tide, but just think, if you try to use this, you'd save money, you save this, and they have just made you move your boundary. So boundaries can be moved in every single place in your life, but people who are practiced, with maneuvering and influencing and finessing are more likely to say things to convince you to break your boundary versus just honoring it once you say no. So you have to be aware that the way that you say no is a message to them about how strong your boundary really is. Okay, so if you are just kind of sheepish and you're looking down and you're like, no, I don't think that's what I want to do. Nah, they're not going to believe you. And so they're going to be like, oh yeah, they're not serious. Let me just go work on them a little bit more and I'll get them to crack their boundary. No, stand firm on business and boundaries. Okay, so we've got that. And the next thing is word choice. Pick your word choices as carefully as possible. And I say practice. Y'all don't realize that some of the most powerful people in the world practice in the mirror how they're going to deliver their persona to the world. So when you are setting boundaries, I want you to practice in the mirror if you're not used to it. So I want you to look in the mirror and be like, no, I don't think that's going to work for me. You can say I don't think, but just the way how you say I don't think, that doesn't work for me. You can change it to that. No, that doesn't work for me. Let's try this. Or no, that's not the direction that I would like to head. Boop, leave a message. No, I don't talk on the phone past 9 p.m. I had to do that with a guy one time. He called me at 1 o'clock in the morning, or I don't know, it was late, and I didn't answer the phone. And then the next day, he was like, this is when I was in college. He was like, I called you last night. I said, yeah, I don't take calls after 9 p.m. to people I don't know. Guess what? The next day he called me at 3 p.m. and said, does this work for you? Absolutely it does. Thank you for being respectful. Because what happens is people realize how much you value yourself, what you're willing to give up, what you're willing to do. It says a lot about how thirsty you look if you're just agreeing to everything. It's like, oh, I just want love, so I'm just going to say, yes, I'm going to do it, instead of just saying, no, this is not it for me. And in order for you to set your boundaries, you must know what your boundaries are. So again, our homework is to take a piece of paper and write down boundaries that you need to have in every sector of your life. Okay? So we're talking about, do you need boundaries in your diet? Do you need boundaries in your love life? Do you need boundaries in your work life? And do you need boundaries in your family / external, out of the normal situation? You need to have all the boundaries that you need so you can know what you're saying no to. A lot of people don't even know what they want. That's why they don't have boundaries. I don't know if I want a guy to call me at 1 a.m. I just glad a guy's calling me. Nah, you need to be able to set the boundaries in order for you to really get what you want in life. So if you say, no, I want a respectful man that calls me before 9 p.m. unless I say no, then that's what I want. So if a man calls you at 1 p.m., you already know he's full of it. Or if you say, I don't want to spend $100 on a date with a girl. So guess what? These are the restaurants that I know that I can afford that stays in my boundaries of my money. And so if a girl's like, oh, I want to go to Mastro's, or I want to go to Chops, and you're going to spend $400, $500, guess what? Say that doesn't work, but I can do Houston's. I can do Ruth Chris. I can do Longhorn and be okay. And if they don't like what you said, they're not for you. I want you to take this home. When you set a boundary and people don't fool with you after you set a boundary, you need to be thanking God, the angels, the higher powers that be, because they were going to be a headache to you from the rest of your life. I promise you that. All right. So now let's talk about what to do after you set the boundary with the anxiety and guilt that you may feel based on their reaction. Because once you set a boundary, you will see them react negatively. Please prepare yourself for this. They're going to be like, man, but what about that one time? That's okay. I get it, but this is a boundary for myself. You don't have to understand. I get it. Start practicing letting them know that you care about them, but this is important to you. And if that upsets them, you understand. And maybe that when they're over it, y'all can talk. Prepare for all of the rejection, the facial expressions, the guilt trips that are going to come with it, because you are going to experience that. You are going to experience people not fooling with you after you set boundaries. Setting boundaries is going to be a lonely life sometimes, because all the people who expected you to say yes because you've been people pleasing this whole time, once you start saying no, usually you're going to eliminate a lot of people in your life, and your new boundaries are going to bring new people who respect you. Also understand that people who don't like to honor boundaries could also have a mental illness or a personality disorder like narcissism. Yes, I'm a therapist. I could throw that N word around real good. Okay. Like I'm telling you, people want to throw that old narcissist stuff around. And I'm like, no. Let me just say this. I want you guys to look up personality cluster disorders. And I want you to see the clusters. I want you to see the borderline, the histrionic, the narcissism, bipolar. I want you to look at these personality disorders up, because these people who struggle with mental and personality disorders are the ones that are most likely to not give a dang about your boundaries, and they will push and push and push until they get it. And so you have to be equipped to deal with people who you don't even know they have mental illness, borderline personality disorder too. Look that up. So when you are dealing with people who exhibit those traits that you're going to look up, you are going to thank God that you don't keep giving in to them, because they will always come back to you to do that. So let's do, as a recap, we want to look at our body language, our tone inflection. We want to be able to stand firm and confidently if we're in person. And if we're not in person, our voice is our body language. So you can't come wavering and slumping in your voice. You have to be assertive and offer an alternative. If you struggle with boundary setting in the beginning, have an alternative ready to go. So I hope that this helped. Leave some comments if you've ever dealt with somebody who did not honor your boundaries, or if you did have boundaries and how you watched them change. Did they conform to it, or did they say, you know what, F your boundaries, I'm out? And so I want to know, I really want to know how you feel, because remember, this is the month of love and Black history. And I want you to love yourself by setting boundaries and standing on business and standing on some boss boundaries, because I'm telling you, it'll change your life and the quality of people in your life. So like and subscribe. If you have a question, you want me to teach you how to do something, how to really, whip it up in your life when it comes to like interpersonal relationships or dealing with power dynamics, please DM me. I'm here for that. And it's at the Trillis Winter on Instagram and the Trillis Winter at Gmail. And I'm here for you. Like and subscribe or I'm gonna quit. Bye.